Testing and assessment are not the same thing. That's one of those quotes you often hear at the beginning of a podcast. Sometimes I like that. I don't often like it, but sometimes it's nice when you click that podcast and you hear a quote from maybe a guest or from the host, and it sort of highlights what's coming. I decided to try that out today. So this is Mark Barnes with the Hack Learning podcast, and testing and assessment are not the same. So today we are hacking the test, and this is such an important topic and one that I've written widely about, and we have hacked in the Hack Learning series. Most recently in the book Hacking Assessment, 10 Ways to Go Gradeless in a Traditional Grades School by Star Saxton. And what got me thinking about this is a recent conversation I had on Twitter, and that often filters then into Facebook on a Teachers Throwing Out Grades Facebook group, which I co-moderate, and in other places, on blogs. There seems to be a great deal of debate about testing and assessment, and as I said in the open, for me, a test is not really assessment. Tests are instruments, and they can monitor performance. They're not very good at it. They're very subjective. Most are multiple choice, which means we don't know if a student guessed. We don't know what gaps there were in learning. So I don't call this assessment. Can a teacher use a test to inform instruction? Sure. It's not the most reliable way to find out what kids know, and we're going to talk more about those reliable ways as we continue. But what I wanted to get at is this idea that when we talk about assessment, still today too many teachers immediately go to the test. And that can be a test that's created by a teacher for a unit exam, or it can be a standardized test, which is similar but a much larger animal, and one that we may take on at another time. But to emphasize this difference, we're hacking the test today. So what we want to do is consider testing to be a problem in education and talk about how to fix that problem, because that's what we do in Hack Learning. So I'm looking at Hacking Assessment by Star Saxton, and I want to read a couple of quotes in here in the Hack in Action section from teachers, and that's what's great about Hack Learning and Hack Learning books that have this hack in action. Somebody's actually done these things. So a teacher, and what I love about this is a math teacher. Oftentimes when we're talking about assessment and formative assessment and observation and feedback, we think language arts, because we think that the sciences can't really do this, that math is all about numbers. Listen to what math teacher Jim Cordery says in Hacking Assessment. And he's emphasizing the power of reflection in his class. And this is what Jim says. I've always tried to get my students to think differently about math, encouraging them to spend time thinking of their method to solving the problem over getting the actual answer. I spend time, my students probably think too much time, asking them to share their thinking behind their answers. To me, what is most important is that they are thinking about math. This is incredible to me, and something that is so important to convey to all teachers. And that's why I really love that Jim is a math teacher here, because he's talking about something completely different from a test, and he's using this for assessment. First of all, there's observation involved, there's feedback involved, but what he's emphasizing to his students is reflection, is metacognition. He's asking them to think about how they think. Think about process. He's getting students to talk about how they approach a math problem and what they do to come up with a solution, oftentimes maybe different solutions. Now you think back to what we're discussing today, the test. how would you get at understanding if students knew these things in a test, especially when most of our tests are multiple choice? Now, I know there's going to always be pushback with Hack Learning Podcasts, and there should be. And we can continue the conversation on Twitter at #HackLearning, in the Hack Learning Facebook group. There's all kinds of places that we can continue this, and we should, on hacklearning.org, our website. But that pushback will often be someone saying, well, my test isn't multiple choice, or not all of my test is multiple choice. And I get that. And we can certainly learn more from the kinds of tests that ask students to perform or to write something. But in all honesty, most of the tests that teachers use, and certainly standardized tests, the bulk of a standardized test is multiple choice. The problem we face here is we don't know what students know in these tests. We don't know if they guess unless we ask them. And when kids take standardized tests, no one's asking them those kinds of questions. We don't know about gaps in instruction. There may be times that a student can get to an answer, but there's some sort of a gap in instruction, and that is causing the student to miss an important step to reaching that final answer. We don't know these things in these multiple choice tests. So I would argue again that a test is not really assessment. Assessment is a conversation. It begins with observation. Students work on something after instruction, and sometimes it's through discovery. It doesn't involve that much instruction. They find things on their own, and teachers guide them. And that's what we should be doing, is less direct instruction and more guiding the learning process, and then talking to kids about it. And as Jim Cordry says, a math teacher, also asking our students to reflect on what they've done and to analyze their process. This is what assessment is. In Hacking Assessment, our author Star Sackstein also talks to another teacher, Adam Jones, and let's listen to what he says about student progress, because the other argument behind testing is that it helps me to understand progress, which again, I'm contending that it does no such thing at all. Listen to what Adam Jones, an experienced educator, says about tracking student progress. He says the most impactful teaching is often invisible to the learner. The teacher exists in the background to listen attentively and offer feedback when necessary. When this is done effectively, students learn how to learn. Increasingly complex adaptive challenges help develop learner curiosity, passion, and efficacy. This is where we want to go with assessment. So Jones is talking about feedback, not testing. There's nothing in here, in his words, that would indicate that we could put a document in front of a student with questions and A, B, C, D choices and ask that student to bubble those in and to have any legitimate understanding of what is going on. Because what Jones says is that the teacher needs to be invisible to the learner. This creates independent learning. When teachers exist in the background, as Adam Jones says, and they listen attentively and they observe, they create settings that help students collaborate. They get them to feel freedom. See, the thing about a test, too, is that it creates testing anxiety. You ever hear a student say, I don't test very well? Ever know a student who does well in school and then takes a test and does very poorly on the test? And we scratch our heads and say, what happened there? And then the student says, I don't test well, because it's test anxiety. And there's no reason to put a student in that position. There's no reason at all. People say, well, we have to challenge them. We can create challenging activities and projects, and then as Adam Jones says, we can be in the background and we can watch and we can listen and make keen observations followed up by questions. We ask our students, why did you do this? And what did you do here? And what if you took this in this direction instead? How would the outcome change? This is what assessment is. It is not a test. So that is a little bit from Hacking Assessment, 10 Ways to Go Gradeless in a Traditional School by Star Sackstein. And there are so many more examples of great teachers using the kind of assessment that truly helps us discover what kind of learning is or is not going on, and then how to act from there, because we can't get that information from a test. And keep in mind, a test is not assessment. So today we hack the test, and what we come away with is we need to go in different directions. Resist the multiple choice test. Create instruments that give students an opportunity to demonstrate learning. And then what's most important is that we ask them about that learning. Carry on a conversation and use that to drive further instruction and to send kids back to do more work to further demonstrate learning. That is what assessment is. Remember, we continue this conversation at hashtag HackLearning on Twitter, the Hack Learning Facebook group, and at hacklearning.org. And in the meantime, check out Hacking Assessment and other Hack Learning books at hacklearningbooks.com. See you next time.